This is the Become the Lion podcast. If you are aiming to become the top in your industry, not second, not above average, the top, then you have come to the right place. Become the Lion will provide you with weekly insights and motivation needed from our guests on how to escape the common herd that society lives in. If you're looking to change your life, then get ready. Welcome to Become the Lion.
Hi, this is Trevor and Nicolas from Become the Lion, and today on the show we have Nicolas Cole. And Nicolas, for our audience out there who might not know you, you mind giving them a little context on who you are and what you're doing right now?
A speaker, an entrepreneur, specifically focused on millennials, and I'm a columnist for Inc. magazine.
Nicolas, how did you get started as a writer?
I got started on a platform called Quora. Quora is what I like to say what Yahoo Answers should have been. Anyone can ask a question, anyone can provide an answer. And I noticed that there were a lot of really intelligent thought leaders on Quora sharing answers to questions. And what I saw were the best answers were written by people that were both providing value and answering the question while also entertaining the reader and telling a bit about their own personal experience. So if someone asked what's it like to be an entrepreneur, someone would respond, 6 months ago I was worth $1 million, and 3 weeks ago I am officially sleeping on my friend's couch. And something like that really draws the reader in because they want to know about the personal story. So I saw that as an opportunity as a writer to get started on Quora, both answering questions and providing value, but also just telling my story and explaining some of the lessons I've learned along the way.
I know you mentioned Yahoo Answers. Why do you think that Quora is so much better than Yahoo Answers?
Well, the user base on Quora is just incredible. They've done a really good job at attracting talent, so to speak. And it's really the community. I've written on Medium, I've written on LinkedIn, I've done a lot of guest blogging, I have a column in Inc. But I find that the community on Quora, everybody there is really eager to learn. The whole purpose of the site is if you have a question, we'll get you the best answer for it. And I'm sure that in the beginning, that was a very difficult thing to manufacture, if you will. But they really have done an incredible job of building this community around people that either genuinely want to share or genuinely want to learn. And for a writer, the best thing, that I could ever ask for is a community of over 100 million people a month wanting to just read and learn.
I want to talk about your story a little bit. So now, you've written for various publications, Time, Forbes, Inc. How did you get that start for writing for them?
It's really cool, actually. So I just this is actually one of the ebooks that I included in my writing course that I just put out. But it's amazing that a lot of people don't really know the secret benefits of Quora. And I don't even like saying that it's secret. It's just they don't really publicize it and they don't really talk about it. But when it happens, you see it. So, for example, when I started writing on Quora about 3-4 months in, I got a message from one of their publishing team. And they said, we really liked this answer to this question. Would you give us the okay to have it republished on Inc.? And I was like, yeah, who wouldn't want their answer republished on, Inc. magazine? So I said sure, and just didn't really know how or why that happened. And then a month later, someone else from their publishing team reached out for another answer I'd written and said, hey, we think this would be a really cool fit for Time on Time's website. Do you want us to republish it? And that's when I started to ask questions and kind of was like, what's going on? Like, how does this work? How are you taking answers that I've written on Quora and how are they ending up in these publications that I know a lot of people would want to see work in, myself included. And I started talking with them, and they said, well, we have all these relationships with these major pubs, and it's a win-win. If the publication is looking for really great content and we have people creating really great content for free, we have a quote-unquote Quora blog on a lot of these big platforms where we can just republish people's content, because that's what both people are looking for. And I was like, okay, that's amazing. I had no idea that this was even happening. So I basically just started to study what a lot of these big publications were posting and what sort of content they were already posting on their site. And I started to really cater my Quora answers to that sort of format. I would respond to someone's answer with like a top 10 list, or really construct it in like an essay sort of format that I knew a big publication would want. And I kind of cracked the code. I mean, there was like a 6-month period where I was having Quora answers republished in major publications every single week. I had it in, that's how I had work originally featured in Inc., Forbes, Fortune, Time, Huffington Post, Business Insider. All of it came from Quora. And then it was only after the fact that Inc. was republishing so much of my stuff that someone made an intro over to their team, and they were like, why don't you just write for us, because we're already republishing your content so often. And then the same started to happen with other publications too.
Have you always been a writer?
Yeah, I went to school for creative writing. I could go all the way back to like the the 4th grade poetry club that I joined, after school. But I've always had an interest in journaling. And then really what got me started was I had a gaming blog when I was in high school. So I was one of the highest ranked World of Warcraft players in the country. And I had a gaming blog where I basically just talked about high level gameplay and strategies, and then also like all of the drama that occurred in the gaming community. And, that whole competitive tier of World of Warcraft players, we were all very vocal. And so I kind of, I became like a source of entertainment, basically talking about all the different rivalries and all of the matches that were happening online against really competitive teams. And by the time I graduated high school, I had close to 10,000 people reading my blog every day. And you got to think, in 2007, having a blog was like unheard of still. No one really did that. And then having 10,000 people reading your blog every day was like beyond unheard of. That was like a professional columnist at a major publication. So for me, I've always been a writer, but I've always been more so like a digital writer, very involved in the internet and the blogging world, really.
So you started this blog, and you're blogging about World of Warcraft. Now I have to ask you, what I'm trying to say is, how did you start writing about, self-development or entrepreneurship?
Just kind of where the journey took me. When I left for college, I stopped gaming. So the game had started to change a lot. It wasn't really what I wanted to be doing for 10 hours a day anymore. So I got interested then in like health and fitness, and kind of the same thing. I got really into lifting weights. I got really into that community. I started blogging on Instagram as like a microblog and posting pictures and sharing my workouts and my nutrition. And then the same thing, I built another audience, of about 10, 15,000 followers on Instagram for fitness. Because I had understood, how do you build a personal brand? How do you deliver readers value? How do you build an audience? I had already learned those things through gaming. So then I did it in fitness and kind of climbed my way up that industry as well. Started working with big brands, started shooting with photographers, etc. And then same thing, I kind of like started to get to the point where I was like, do I want to make this my career? And I didn't want to be a personal trainer for the rest of my life or be a professional bodybuilder. I just liked lifting weights. So then I kind of realized that it wasn't just the health and fitness part that interested me. It was this now second time of my doing it, of building a personal brand, building an audience around what I love, and realizing how universal that is and how many people in different industries all want to learn how to do that. So I had just graduated from college. I had started working at a digital social agency in Chicago. And that was kind of my open door to, now I can take this, start learning more about digital marketing and brand building in the conventional sense, and now start doing it with and for other people. So it was really working at that agency and in that environment where I started to learn more about different types of brands, and then just applying it to different industries. I started working with local clothing brands, helping them build their brand, build an audience, working with people in health and fitness and their personal brands. I went back to gaming. I'm now working with like a gaming startup in LA called Level Up Dojo. That's an education platform for gamers, helping them build an audience and build their brand. So just kind of expanding this, like the root of what I realized I was good at, which was essentially brand building a personal brand, and then just not confining that to one industry. And then just like I always have done, whenever I get into something, I like to write about it. So the two made sense. Writing about branding and entrepreneurship just kind of went hand in hand with that.
And since you've been a writer, what are some of the challenges that you've had to overcome?
I mean, I think the most conventional is what people would call writer's block. But I've found that, I don't know, it's the real challenge with being a writer, and something that not many people talk about, is like everybody thinks that what you're writing is about them, and if it's something that triggers them and is a I don't know, like a insecurity or something that they don't want to think about or talk about, they can think that you're taking aim at them. And if it's something that's like really positive or does really well, they can step in and go like, oh, well, I was the one who told you that, I should take credit for that. Why didn't you give me credit in your writing? So, it's difficult because as a writer, so much of your inspiration comes from other people. It comes from being out in the world. It comes from listening. It comes from observing. And you kind of have to be the honest voice, whatever it is that you see and you want to write about or you want to shed light on, that's on you to do. And the truth is that some people don't like that. So I would say just whenever you are trying to be a voice, and if you are trying to be a voice in your industry or your community, be prepared for people to not like what it is that you're doing, or for people to, as soon as you start doing well, to take credit for what you're doing. Because when you're a writer, you are kind of everyone's voice, especially if you're a thought leader in an industry. So people can feel like, since they don't have that, and you're the one, quote unquote, speaking for them or speaking for the community, sometimes that can be taken the wrong way. So I always encourage people to really listen and to take feedback and to not make it like a war. It shouldn't be, but also to be aware of what you're stepping into, and to take that responsibility on as a writer is not to be underestimated.
Do you think a fear that some people might have is when they're going, to start writing or starting their own blog, is they're scared of putting themselves out there?
Oh, 100%. 100%. And, the funny thing is, so I got made fun of notoriously for playing World of Warcraft in high school, right? And, it was just a different time. You got to think, 2007, Facebook wasn't even really established yet. This thing called MySpace was still kind of like a cool thing, and everyone was like, oh, this is kind of weird. I have a profile, but okay. We were just starting to get into this idea of like a social landscape online. And for me to basically, I was doing two things at once that were very like threatening, if you will, to what is the status quo in society. One was I was spending all of my time in front of my computer, which that in itself, even 10 years ago, people weren't thrilled about. Now we spend all our time in front of computers and we're okay with it. But 10 years ago, we weren't. Then on top of that, what I was doing on my computer was I was playing video games. And everybody was like, there's no future in video games, right? And same thing, 10 years later, now billion-dollar industry, big brands want in. Teenagers are flying around the world, competing on big stages. More people watch League of Legends than they do like a game of NFL football. Pretty close. You know what I mean? So like the landscape's completely changed. And 10 years ago, I saw that and I knew where it was all going. That's why I wanted to be involved in it. That's why I wanted to be part of that group of pioneers. And then third, to take it a third step forward, was I wanted to be a journalist for that community online. So while everybody else was like, print isn't going away and blogging will never be a credible thing, right? And here you're running a blog today, right? So we see how much the landscape has changed. And 10 years ago, I felt the same way. I was like, there's no chance with how much time I spend on the computer and how immersed in the digital world I am that this isn't where everything's going. You couldn't convince me that newspapers were going to be like around forever. So I was doing all of these things that were very threatening to the status quo of what a teenager should be spending his time on. But I was so in it and I loved it so much. And when I started blogging and putting my voice out there, like the gaming community for putting your voice out there, extremely vocal. Like I remember writing blogs and reading them the next morning, reading the comments while I was at school. And half of them would be like, man, I love your writing. You know, I always look forward to reading your next blog over my cup of coffee. And then the next one will be like, I hope you get hit by a bus on your way to school tomorrow. Because that's just how the gaming community is. And they're very vocal. And they'd be like, you're a terrible writer. You should kill yourself. You know? And so as a 17-year-old, to be faced with that sort of feedback online, already being told that what I was spending my time on wasn't valuable, and then to have my voice put out there and to get that sort of feedback, like at this point now, that fear is completely gone, you know, because I've grown up in a space where people didn't welcome that. They didn't welcome your voice that way. So if you can handle that, yeah, then it makes someone tweeting at you today where they're like, I didn't like your Inc. article. I'm like, okay, you know, because it's such a drastic difference. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. And do you think people might have a resistance to putting themselves out there? You know, someone might come to you and say, hey, I didn't like your Inc. article, but now it's like to the point in your life where like, whatever, you know, I still wrote for Inc. and what have you written, you know?
Yeah, and I think if someone does have those reservations, like that's why I think there's value in me sharing my personal experiences and my stories, because it's one thing for me to just say, yeah, you shouldn't be afraid, right? But that doesn't really help anybody, you know. That doesn't really make it any less scary or help them understand what the process looks like. So I like sharing my personal stories to give them context and for me to be like, yeah, the first time I wrote a blog on the internet back in 2007, I was a little apprehensive. And you know what? The first time I read a comment on my blog where someone was like, you should learn how to grammar and PS, like go upstairs and kill yourself. Like, yeah, I was like, geez, you know, the gaming community, like they don't mess around. But at the same time, that sort of feedback gave me very tough skin. And I also was like, the internet's the internet. You know, it is what it is. So I like sharing those stories with people so that if they are hesitant themselves, then they know, okay, if I've done it and I've been able to endure and just keep going and keep refining my voice and keep improving at my craft, then there's no reason they can't do it too.
Do you think storytelling and sharing your personal experiences is keen on building your personal brand?
100%. I mean, if there's one thing that I really learned by writing on Quora, first, it was what I recognized and what drew me in. And then second, it's what has led to my success on that platform. I mean, my Quora presence alone, I've been a top writer on there for 3 years. I've accumulated over 16 million views on my answers. I've had probably over 50 answers republished in major publications. I have over 30,000 followers, people who, specifically read what I put out there. I attribute all of that to not just me answering a question and providing, information, but me sharing my personal story. And you look at anybody that succeeds on Quora, anybody that really succeeds on Medium or succeeds in having their own blog, or all the way up to people that have become, online celebrities, YouTubers, they all share their personal story. They provide value. They give the audience what they're looking for. They entertain them in some way, but their personal story is very well known.
As you were starting to write on Quora, would you write every single day on there?
Yep, every day. I made it my rule that I would write one answer per day, because I've learned over the years through gaming, through fitness, there's huge value in daily repetition, and if you're not doing something every day, then your growth curve is a lot less and you don't improve as quickly as you would prefer. So I challenged myself to write an answer a day, and that, I think, it's the volume approach. The more you put out, the more chances you have to succeed. And sure enough, 3 months in, I had my first answer go viral, front page of Reddit, over 1 million views. 4th month in, started getting featured in publications. 9 months in, top writer status. It moved fast, but it's because of just that slow and steady daily habit.
I know how you mentioned, how writing is a daily habit, but I wanted to ask you, what does the rest of your day look like?
Well, for a while, it was the typical, I would work 9 to 5, 9 to 6 at this agency, and then I would come home, eat, go to the gym, and then sit down at my desk and write for the rest of the night. For about 4 years, that was pretty much my schedule, and that's at night was all I had. I would either work on my book or I would work on writing for Quora. And that was a grind, because you only have so many hours in the day. But recently, I've been fortunate. I was able to leave my 9 to 5 and focus on writing full time. So a big part of my day now is just I do a lot of ghostwriting for other people. Serial entrepreneurs, executives, business owners, big brands. And then I'll also do digital marketing strategy for people as well. So I usually try and put those things in the afternoon, noon to 5-ish, spend my mornings writing, because I wanted to take a step away from, working the conventional 9 to 5 so that I could invest more time in my craft. And then, same things, try and make it to the gym. And now I'm fortunate that I can travel more. So usually a couple times a month, I'll leave Chicago and head out to, LA to go work with a couple startups out there, or I'll go visit some friends in Atlanta, but regardless, I'm still working, I'm still writing. It's just now I can do it from my laptop.
Nicolas, we're an entrepreneurial podcast, and I know that you're doing this full time, but what was that experience like leaving your 9 to 5?
Oh man, this is actually what I'm working on my next book, and it's going to be about this. Actually, you're the first person I've gotten to talk to about this, which is awesome. So the book is going to be called How to Leap, and it's really focused around, if you do want to leave your 9 to 5, how do you do that? And I think, I'm a millennial. I'm 26 years old. I like to keep my finger on the pulse. I like to listen to what my peers are doing and want to do. And there's this overwhelming sense of I want to do my own thing. I want to go off the beaten path. I want to leave my 9 to 5, but there's really only a handful of people that do it. And so since I've been able to do it, I wanted to kind of then go back, walk through the process again and see how I was able to do that, and then teach other people how they can do the same. And the big thing that I already have kind of seen, and is a big point in the book, is that if you set yourself up the right way and you don't make rash decisions, leaving your 9 to 5, it feels like a leap, but it really is, it should just be the next logical step. And what I mean by that is, I think we all build it up to be this really, really big moment, like the moment when you jump off the cliff and you have no parachute and it's just, you and the 30,000 feet of air below you. But it's really not. It's if you are deliberate in the way that you set up your path and deliberate about what you're leaping to, the moment after you do it, you realize that it wasn't really a leap at all. It was just the next logical step on your journey. And you're just reallocating your time and you're changing your priorities. So it's a very daunting feeling because, you're stepping outside of your comfort zone to do so. But it's also one of those things where I built it up to be much bigger than I feel like it actually was. And it really was just the next logical step. And I think if people really start to think about that and internalize that, it makes the process a lot more manageable.
You made an excellent point before where you said how you were writing for 4 years when you would come home from work. And some people might say, hey, like just because I have a 9 to 5, I come home when I'm too tired. But like that wasn't you. You still went to the gym, and then you'd come home from the gym and you would still write, and you used it as a means to an end.
Yeah. I think with that, it's hard because all of the inspirational entrepreneurs out there, the whole conversation tends to just kind of exist up in the clouds. You talk about like doing what you love, or you talk about taking the leap from your 9 to 5, and the conversation's depth really just goes to like, you just got to work hard. You just got to chase your dreams. And that doesn't really help people. It might give them like a little boost for the moment, but it doesn't really give them a sense of what actually needs to happen. And so what I try and really tell people, if someone's like, I want to do my own thing, I kind of take a second and want to like sit them down and be like, all right, let me explain to you what I had to do for years in order to make that happen, and I sacrificed everything. I mean, I wanted to have a certain amount of money saved up so that when I left my 9 to 5, I had some cushion, so I kept my overhead very low. I stayed in, a one-room studio apartment for 4 years. I took the train instead of taking cabs. I made my meals instead of eating out. I made very deliberate decisions along the way so that even though 4 years felt like a lot of time, now I'm 26 and I realize how much further along I am than a lot of my peers. And it's not, again, like it's not because I'm some, insanely talented person. I just was very deliberate about what I did and deliberate about how I practiced it. So I think people need to really know, and that's what I don't want to just be the person that's like, yeah, just work hard and it all works out, because that's really not true. What's true is you have to be smart about it, and you have to realize that if you want to do your own thing, I went on 6 hours of sleep for 4 years, worked a full day, came home, went to the gym for an hour and a half, came home, and then was up writing until midnight, and then was back up at 6 a.m. for 90% of those 4 years. And I think that that's important to be transparent about, so people really know what they're walking into if you want to do your own thing.
I like that a lot, especially for our audience who might be listening who's younger. And sometimes they might see someone like yourself and think that you're an overnight success, but they don't know all the hard work that you've put in behind the scenes.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking about this maybe like 2 weeks ago. I wish that I had documented more, honestly. And I mean that in all of my journeys. That's something that I'm really trying to do more now, because I wish that I had footage from 4 years ago, right when I graduated. And if I had me walking into that first studio apartment that was literally the size of like a walk-in closet, and I was sleeping on an air mattress because I couldn't afford a bed, and like how I set up my desk, pulled out my laptop, and was like, time to get to work. I wish I had that to point to, because it didn't deter me at all. I just acknowledged where I was and just said, okay, whatever I got to do to make what I want to have happen. I didn't want to I knew that I could get a higher paying job if I wanted. I knew I could just kind of climb up the ladder and probably earn a decent salary somewhere for the rest of my life. But that's not what I wanted. I wanted to figure out how to build something on my own. I wanted to do my own thing. I wanted to take my passion and make a living out of it. So if that meant sacrificing, luxuries for 4 years, so be it. And now I'm on the other side, and I'm like, yeah, that was the easiest sacrifice of my life. At the time it wasn't, but as soon as you cross over, you're like, oh yeah, it was all worth it, 100%.
How did you stay patient throughout your journey?
I think that really speaks to just previous lessons. Like, it's hard if you're not a gamer to understand how I was able to learn this, but gamers know. Competitive gaming, I think, was really my foundation. Like, you want to talk about patience, I will never forget for the rest of my life, 4-month long stretches of going on 3-4 hours of sleep every single night during school. I remember being in high school, being up until 3 a.m, like grinding something in the game for a reward, and then getting 4 hours of sleep, waking up, going to school all day, coming home, and spending the rest of my night on my computer again, and just doing that obsessively day after day after day. And the people that I played with and the other gamers and the goals that we had set and how competitive we were and how much we pushed each other. If one of us was tired, we'd be like, dude, you're not going to sleep. It's 1 a.m. We have 2 more hours of grinding to do. Let's go. And as a teenager, those are really formative years. And a lot of people looked at that and were just like, you're wasting your life in front of a video game. But that's not how I felt about it at all. It felt the exact same to me as being in a hockey practice. And I played hockey my whole life too. And it felt the same. And the people I was gaming with were my teammates, and we pushed each other. And that whole experience taught me a different level of discipline. I realized that I have no problem sitting down in front of my computer and grinding for an entire weekend straight, 18 hours a day, back to back to back. I have no problem doing it because I did it for 4 years playing World of Warcraft, So now just replace video games with digital entrepreneurship, and I realized how many of those skill sets are exactly the same. And so because I saw in gaming where that was the first computer game I'd ever played, I was really big into consoles when I was growing up, but that was the first computer game I'd ever played seriously at 14. And 3 years later, I was one of the highest ranked players in the country. So I can look back on that experience and go, that didn't happen overnight. I can remember all of the twists and turns that path took. I can remember how many new characters I started. I can remember how many servers I played on. I can remember how many hours I invested. And so then applying that to things like fitness and then applying it to things like entrepreneurship, I've already experienced that level of patience. So I can take that same lesson and apply it to the next venture.
I wanted to ask you about your friends and family while you're going on through this journey. As you started out as a gamer, what was that experience like dealing with them? It had its share of challenges. I think it's just hard
for anybody in any, the hardest part is people will never love what you love as much as you do, right? And it goes both ways. Things like people close to me, the things that they love, I try and understand it, or I try to support it. But at the end of the day, they'll always love it more than me because it's their thing. And the same has always, been my case as well. So it was, especially I think just given the time period, back in 2007 and just where we were as a digital culture, it was a lot harder to understand. But at the end of the day, people close to me, they always want to be supportive and just see me happy with what I'm doing.
So now you left your job and now you're being, a full-time writer. I wanted to ask you, how are you making a living from your writing?
A bunch of different ways. So like I said, I do a lot of very high clientele ghostwriting. Really, my sweet spot is someone who has already built a successful company or has already done some really cool things in their career. They have a lot to share. They are genuinely a thought leader, but they haven't expressed that online, and they want to build an audience. So I would come in, spend a lot of time talking with them, learning from them, listening to what they want to share with people, and then constructing that into articles or blog posts or sharing it online in written form for them as a ghostwriter. Second is I do a lot of consulting in terms of digital strategy, specifically around this idea of thought leadership. At 26, I've essentially accumulated more writing accolades than most professional and very seasoned writers that have been doing it for 10 plus years. And so because I've been able to do so very quickly, I understand the digital landscapes in the world of blogging, in the world of publications, in the world of content, the world of social. So I'll work with companies or established individuals and help them refine that strategy and figure out, how do you build a bigger audience? How do you gain more credibility for yourself? Things like that. And then third is just my own writing. Publishing a book, that's a revenue stream. Creating online courses, like I just created this writing course, teaching people how to become thought leaders from their writing. That's a revenue stream. So all of these things are intended to allow me to continue to be a full-time writer, allow me to continue spending time refining my craft and sharing it with people.
I wanted to ask you, what is the process like from when you have the idea about an article all the way through until it becomes published?
That process for me has become very short because my volume is very high. I probably write anywhere from 3 to 6 articles a day. And that's a lot. Most people can't do and don't do 1 article a day. So in order for me to have that high level of volume, A, that's something that I've had to really practice and master over the years. But B, that process from idea to article happens, it's very short, it's very quick. I keep a list on my computer, like in Evernote, and it's tied to my phone. So if I'm ever out or I'm reading something or I'm having a conversation with someone and I get an idea for an article, I'll just add it to my list. So I always have something to pull back from. If I sit down at night or sit down in the morning and it's time to write and nothing's coming to mind, I pull from this list that I'm always adding to. And then it's just, again, just practice makes perfect. Whatever the idea is, I really work to read a lot, to listen to a lot of podcasts, to watch a lot of YouTube shows. I'm always trying to feed the ideas. So whenever I sit down to write, most articles, I can do very quickly. And so that timetable process, where someone might need to take 2 hours to write an article, over the years, I've been able to get it down, where most articles, take me about 20 minutes. So yeah, the process is very short at this point.
Nicolas, I wanted to say this interview has been excellent so far, and now we're going to enter the lines round, where I'm just going to ask you a couple of quick questions before we end the show today.
Okay.
What would you say to someone who's just starting out and going after their dream?
I think you really said it with patience. You have to be patient with the process, but even more than that, I would say volume. I've really, really come to believe that this idea, volume wins. So if you want to be a blogger, blog every single day. You want to be a writer, write every single day. You want to be a musician, play music every single day. And that's just kind of the very basic foundation. And the thing that I would say to take it further is that you have to combine that practice every day with putting something out every day. I think that I've been able to grow as a writer very quickly because everything that I write, I put out for the most part. When I'm working on a larger piece like a book at this point, I keep that process to myself. But blogs, columns, whatever comes out that day, it goes out. And I get feedback on it. Some days it's good, some days it's bad. Some days I go viral, some days 100 people read it. But either way, you're practicing every day and you're putting it out every day. So you're getting feedback every day. And that's what's going to allow you to move faster and to learn faster and to grow faster.
Do you happen to have 2 or 3 books that you'd recommend for our audience to read?
Yes. I would say as an entrepreneur, you should definitely read, that's a staple. Think and Grow Rich was very pivotal for me. I took a lot of those lessons and really applied them. Like one of the big ones from Think and Grow Rich is writing down your chief aim. What is it that you really want to accomplish or achieve for yourself? Writing it out and then reading it out loud every morning and then reading it out loud again every night before you go to sleep. And I did that for those, I think 3 out of those 4 years of really hitting this hard. I had my chief aim and I read it every morning and every night out loud. And I noticed how much that worked. It really instills it in your consciousness and reminds you of what you need to work on. Fiction, I always point to Portnoy's Complaint by Philip Roth. Incredible novel if you're ever looking for something entertaining. And third, I would say there's this book called Manage Your Day to Day by 99U. 99U is the publication by Behance, I believe. And they wrote this cool book about creativity and productivity and basically how you need to, as a creative person, really master the art of separating yourself from distractions, and how you can structure your day in a way to get more done. And I really like that book a lot.
And Nicolas, last question of the day. Where can our audience find you?
I post everything on nicolascole.com. Nicolas, Nicolas, Cole, Cole.com. And then all of my social is Nicolas Cole 77. And every week on my blog, I do a recap of, I write in a lot of different places online. I write on Quora, I write for Inc., I'll do feature columns, guest blogs, podcasts like this, etc. So every week I do a recap and post it on my blog for all of that content for the week so that people can go through and find it.
And I just wanted to say thank you so much for taking the time today to speak with our audience.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to Become the Lion. Everything from today's show will be in our show notes on our website. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review on iTunes. Till next week, don't stop grinding.